Hey there, friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and today we got a pretty massive This Week in Destiny, going over a ton of sandbox changes that should shake up the meta on the road to the final shape, and potentially also give us an idea on what builds will be useful when the final shape does drop in a few months. I know a lot of people are taking a break from the game, but this is good information if you are going to be playing that last expansion of the 10-year-long saga, like a lot of dedicated Destiny players are. First off, we are getting a nerf to Threaded Spectre in PvP, but also there are going to be some buffs to it in PvE to try to compensate for that. Essentially, the cooldown on your dodge will be increased in PvP. They reduce the class ability regeneration penalty by 50% in PvE for Threaded Spectre and Ensnaring Slam, and then they've also increased the Threaded Spectre detonation damage by 25% versus PvE combatants. Threadlings. They made Threadlings easier to shoot in PvP, and also reduce base damage versus enemy players by 40 to 35. Damage with Thread of Evolution equipped reduced versus enemy players from 45 to 38.5. May not seem like a lot, but that will make a difference. They also fixed some issues with Threadlings as well. They also buffed Broodweaver, the Arcane Needle, which is the melee for the Strand Warlock, increased aim assist fall off, increased tracking angular velocity, increased the length of the projectile's tracking shape, fixed an issue where uncharged melees with the Arcane Needle is equipped, resulting in the player appearing to freeze in melee pose. Restoration and Radiant updates. Restoration and Radiant fixed an issue where the maximum duration was being incorrectly stored, resulting in their buff timers resetting to their initial duration instead of their maximum when the buff was reapplied. So that's going to be very, very interesting. And then this also resolves similar issues with shorter restoration sources like Sunspots with Sol Invictus aspect. So hopefully that balances restoration and Radiant out just a little bit in PvP specifically, although we'll see how that affects PvE as well. Ember of Mercy now extends your current restoration duration by 2 seconds when a fire sprite is collected. If you don't already have restoration active, collecting one grants restoration with a 2-second duration. This restoration extension is increased to 3 seconds when Ember of Solace is equipped. Ember of Empyrean increased the maximum duration extension from 12 to 15. Reworked the duration extension granted with each solar defeat. Previously, it always granted a 4-second duration, regardless of the type of target. Now the duration extends based on the strength of the target. Defeating an elite or weaker combatant will result in less time compared to defeating a champion or stronger. Solar ability buffs, consecration got buffed, increased the travel distance of initial ground follow, increased the height of the slam, follow detonation, increased the travel distance of the slam ground follow, and then increased the travel speed of the slam ground follow as well, including the Pyrogale Gauntlet's enhanced version. So that's going to make it just last longer essentially as you are using that slam. They also heard the consistent feedback about Gunpowder Gamble's self-damage, reduce the maximum self-damage from 144 to 80 with Gunpowder Gamble. That's it for that part. As far as the weapon sandbox, heavy burst hand cannons correcting an issue that was causing them to have 25% less aim assist. Bows, this is going to be for PvP especially. Reduce the auto-aim fall-off distance, i.e. aim assist will be less effective at long range. Reduce the maximum auto-aim cone. Breakneck now has added target lock to Breakneck's second trait column. Lightweight scout rifles increase base damage by 5%. Sniper rifles reduced the auto-aim cone size by 10%. We'll see how that works out. Rocket launcher meta has become more set than we'd like, with adaptive and aggressives outperforming the rest. So they've buffed the precision and high impact. Precision increased reserve ammo by 2 and reduced damage penalty from -10 to -5%. That should be pretty huge. High impact increased the reserve ammo by 2. Now deals more detonation damage and less impact for roughly the same total damage. This should make it more effective versus groups or when getting splash damage on a target with a near miss. This also affects Deathbringer, Gallahorn, and Truth. We touched heavy grenade launchers a few times and they're fairly strong. It hasn't moved the needle. It's time to make more substantial changes. This is good. Increase reserve ammo by a minimum of 6 rounds, maximum of 10 rounds, which is nice. Reduce spike grenades impact damage buff from 50% to 12.5%. With the below changes, this reduces the total spike grenade damage buff from about 8% to 3%, making them less mandatory. So if you have a spike grenade, you might want to swap that out. Increase direct hit damage by 10%, combined with the above change. This brings non-spike grenade launchers almost up to the level of spike grenade launchers, and very slightly reduced damage output with spike grenade launcher. So other options might be viable there. Increased detonation damage by 5%. In PvP, this is offset by a reduction to detonation damage for no overall change. They also buffed the waveframe grenade launchers, which haven't been used at all. Increased damage by 20%. Increased wave width by 40%. That's pretty massive. I'm going to definitely check those out. Hopefully they're good. Caster swords. Reduce heavy attack energy cost from 5 to 4. Increase heavy attack damage by 16%. Hopefully that works out. I love caster swords personally. I really enjoy using them, but they're just not super effective. Exotics. Vigilance Wing now has a deterministic recoil pattern. Vex Mythoclast increased ADS damage falloff. Scalar. Wish Ender. True Sight now will deactivate if you leave ADS or hold it for longer than 3 seconds. To reactivate, you must fully redraw the bow. This is going to be good for PvP especially, and I think it's not going to be a problem in PvE whatsoever. So I think that's a good change. Hopefully it actually has an effect on how used Wish Ender actually is. Edge of Action increases damage resistance in PvE against all combatants except bosses to 85%. Increases damage resistance against bosses by 15%. So Edge of Action bubble isn't intended to complete directly with Ward of Dawn, but we hit its health too hard. So hopefully, I don't know if that'll get used at all, but we'll see. Mana Core shipped with a unique airborne playstyle, but it has several usability issues that we aim to address. So Mana Core. Players must now be airborne for 0.5 seconds and deal damage with the weapon to activate the perk. We gave it a special reload to quickly disengage anti-gravity thrusters. Terrible will also receive this special reload animation. While anti-grav thrusters are engaged, combatants will be less accurate when targeting the player, similar to Always On Time Sparrow. With the Catalyst, final blows and sustained damage with Mana Core, while airborne grant avoid overshield and retarded ammo with the magazine. We'll see. I mean, it'd be a really cool playstyle if Mana Core would be good, but it just never has been. So hopefully that does change. So Exdirus, the grenade launcher, hasn't been hitting hard enough, so increased impact damage against PvE enemies by 50%. Holy hell. Detonation damage is unaffected, so the total damage increase works out to about 20%. Increase the maximum rate of fire by 17%. Okay, I mean, that would be really, really cool if that's good. I've liked that weapon overall. Perks. Heal Clip now grants cure times 2 to the player who while still granting cure times 1 to nearby allies. Good. Maybe that'll be useful now. Trench Barrel can now be activated by dealing damage with ranged melee attacks. Barrel Constrictor was constrained, so now once activated no longer deactivates upon firing a shot. Lasts for 7.5 seconds. Enhanced Barrel Constrictor lasts for 8.5 seconds. Loose Change isn't particularly interesting for PvP, so now it applies a subclass 3.0 debuff. Now applying one now grants plus 20 aim assist, 20% reduced ADS, in addition to the existing plus 50 reload stat. Dual Loader takes up a trait slot, which is sufficient enough to cost the designated penalty. So Dual Loader remove the reload speed penalty, change the wording of the perk description to make it clear. That increases the number of shots reloaded, so we can now apply it to other weapon types without confusion. That's a good change. Hopefully it'll make Dual Loader viable. I'm not so sure about that. Text Mechanica stock now grants plus 20 range and 1.5 degree hipfire precision. Hawkeye Breach armaments, Deconstruct and Sundering now work against Void Souls, Strand Clones, Cabal Projection Shields, and Brigs. Cool. Hawkeye Breach armaments damage bonus versus Stasis Crystals reduced. As an origin trait, Sundering was a fairly high uptime in Warlord's Rune because of the number of eye turrets. So Sundering can now trigger on shield break in addition to final blows on vehicles and constructs. We had a small reload speed scaler while reducing the charge rate benefit to account for the higher uptime. Hatchling is a fun perk, but weapons that can technically crit but are bad as it suffers from precision kills being the only activator. So Hatchling activation requirement no longer locked to an archetype in terms of precision or non-precision kills. Instead, the perk will trigger with either a precision kill or 3 non-precision kills. I think that's good. Obviously, for certain weapons, it's going to be even better. Target Lock now activates later in the magazine for SMGs, so the damage buff will swing primary weapon gunfights less often. Envious Assassin's Loop works well, but with a certain damage types, the payoff was far too great for the amount of effort involved. Envious Assassin, each activation is now capped at 100% of magazine instead of 150, and the maximum overflow is now 3 times the magazine. Bait and Switch reduced damage bonus by 5% from 35 to 30. Maybe that'll make Bait and Switch a little bit less in demand as the option for rocket launchers. 1-2 punch now correctly deactivates after dealing damage with a powered melee. That's a fix. And then Deconstruct updated the perk description to correctly state that it pulls ammo from thin air, not reserves. Mods, bonus damage against mini-bosses should have been part of boss spec, not major spec. We updated these mods to correct that. The future, we pull a lot of balance changes from the final shape and Destiny 2 into light into update 7.3.5, but we still have a number of small but exciting changes shipping it into the light, touching content many players haven't thought about in years. That's good. In the final shape, we're rebalancing many weapon types in PvE, buffing underperforming weapons, and leaving most high performers untouched. So we're looking at PvE weapon tuning anyway. Over the course of the year, the final shape, we'll be looking at weapon mods that feel mandatory. So all of this is good. I think we'll see the meta shape out for the final shape with this next update, which is nice. And then PvP Strike team, they're talking about PvP changes as well. They want to help players understand clearly the sequence event that led to their death. This one is very, very interesting, and I think is worth a read. I'm going to leave a link in the description down below. They essentially go over why they're making the changes, what's been going on with PvP. So now they want to talk about they have certain ability builds with either higher uptime or higher potency than we believe is healthy. To keep those builds in check, provide a near constant availability of special ammo, which means there's always a surplus. And to keep primary weapons competitive, we made primary weapons highly lethal, fast killing, and also very forgiving. All that leads to a higher percentage of deaths where the target's perspective, it feels like there's nothing they could have done. So they're increasing player health by 30 HP in base Crucible, so players will have 100 up from 70, and 116 to 130 shields, depending on resilience. Ability cooldowns. Melee, grenade, and class ability now have 15% penalty, applied in Crucible only. Super cooldowns have a 20% penalty, Crucible only as well. I think that's not bad. I'll be interested to see how that all plays out. It might make the game slower. I do like ability-centric PvP, but also I'm not too worried about this overall. I think you'll still be able to have some really cool builds with this. Supers increase base super damage by 31%. Melee increase base melee damage by 16. Grenades increase arc flux damage by 16. Now, primary weapon archetypes, pulse rifles, auto rifles, sidearms, and scout rifles increase critical hit damage by 14%. So you have more health. So essentially, the body shots do less, but the crits do more. Hand cannons increase crit hit damage by 10, reduce body shot by 5, reduce flinch dealt to players by projectile impact by 12.5%, and by explosive payload by 10%. Good. Less flinch, I think, is not a bad thing in my opinion. SMGs increase critical hit damage by 12.5, reduce body shot damage by 3%. Again, because you're shooting so many bullets, that 3% adds up. Bows reduce base damage by 15%. Also good. Special ammo, you will start all games with 2 kills worth of special. Instead of 2 kills worth of special being granted every time you spawn, you will earn more ammo by filling up a special ammo meter, with points being given for kills, assists, or completing objectives. Completing objectives is good if you're an objective player, I think. Getting 100 points grants you 2 kills worth of special for your chosen weapon. So they have a breakdown of all that there, which is nice. To offset special weapon archetypes, to offset the increased health and partially make for reduced uptime. Trace rifles, shotguns, and fusion rifles increase base damage by 20%. Glaives increase projectile by 20. Increase melee damage by 16. Heavy weapons, heavy grenade launchers reduce detonation damage by 5%. Machine guns increase base damage by 20%. So that's nice. I think that's going to be really cool to see. Hopefully, machine guns are usable now in PvE. PvP, I'm sorry. So we'll see how that works. Fighting line, decreased damage versus players. Devil's Rune, decreased charge beam damage against players. Crimson, reduced flinch dealt to players. Forerunner, increased damage versus players in Crucible. Okay, by 20%. That could be nice. And then Symmetry, increased revolution damage versus players by 16%. That's all. So, man, there was so much to go over. I think all of this is good. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this shakes up the meta, how this shakes everything out over the next couple months. I do feel like there's a lot going on with the game, trying to put it in a healthy place as they get ready for Destiny 2, the final shape, which is going to be an absolutely massive event. My name is JoPa. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more Destiny 2 content from me. I know we're in a lull period. I'm really hopeful to get more content out after these updates to kind of theory craft heading into the final shape. So definitely let me know what you're looking forward to running when that does drop. My name is JoPa. Have a good one. I'll catch you all later.